Now, speaking of spellcaster marshals, we have a magus. Magus are uh, they're sword and sorcery characters. Because a lot of the base content doesn't allow great utility of using magic and using a sword at the same time, you can cast spells, or you can swing your weapons, or you can buff yourself and swing your weapons, but using both at the same time doesn't really happen a whole lot in Pathfinder unless you're a magus. A magus is, I mean, they're limited in terms of their spell. They don't have the high-end spell casting that a wizard or sorcerer might have. However, they're allowed to use spellcasting and attacking with their weapon as part of the same action. So buffing yourself and attacking, excuse me, buffing themselves and attacking, or channeling magic through their weapon and attacking at the same time. So they can deploy touch spells as part of making their weapon attacks. So a normal wizard wouldn't like it in up close and melee, wouldn't like it in using touch spells. However, maguses are different. They're expected to be up in the front, or if they're in back, they can sometimes. There's some maguses you can use throwing weapons. There's one that's like Gambit where they use throwing cards. Really cool class, a lot of fun. But if you're looking to be that, it's considered a Gish class, a sword and magic build. A little bit lacking in staying power, and they're kind of similar in terms of their early build. A lot of them use like shocking grasps to do damage, or some other common spells. Bladed Dash is another common one. But there's a couple of different ways to build them, and they can be a whole lot of fun if you're looking for that style of play, because it is well supported. Now, mediums. Mediums are it's an occult class, so occult classes do not have near as much support as a lot of other classes. We're going to cover another one. We've already covered the kineticist. I said it was kind of half baked. Medium, it never really took off. The theme of medium is you are considered you take spirits from various different not classes but effectively different archetypes, classes, models. The more martial focused one, the more stealthy focused one, spellcaster and whatnot. You bring them into your body based on the region you're in. You can only call certain spirits in certain different locations, and based on that spirit, you get different bonuses during the day. The problem is the jack of all trades is a master of none. And in Pathfinder, being a jack of all trades is especially debilitating. Because being okay can be very difficult in those stronger fights. Oftentimes, a medium wants to specialize in doing specific forms of combat. So if they're going to be the spellcasting folk, or if they want to lean a little bit more into spellcasting as a medium, can do that. They're just going to, pretty much every day, going to pick the spellcasting guy. They give bonuses, and eventually they can give bonuses to their party members based on the spirit that they have chosen. They get spell casting. Specifically, they get up to 4th level spell casting, and they have a really, really unique spell list. But it's difficult. It can be a little bit more difficult because there's not a whole lot of stuff surrounding it. But they can be an interesting class if you've done a lot of the others before. Next up, Mesmerist. Personally, I am not overly familiar with Mesmerists, so I can't speak to a lot of what they do. Mesmerist, of course, just looking at it implies some sort of enchantment effects, mesmerizing people and that sort of thing. And they do get a lot of enchantment, illusion spells on their spell list. I think they go up to 6th level spell casting. 9th being the max spell casting level, of course, if I didn't already state that. Their specific class features beyond, or that I'm aware of beyond their specific spellcasting, they have something called a gaze, as in Gaze. So looking at someone. So when they look at someone with their gaze, they can do various effects. You should make them more susceptible to their magics. They can make them take penalties. They can enchant them and whatnot based on the features they have selected. Overly familiar with them, so I can't speak greatly. Of course, the various guides, of course, will be helpful. But a cool class to do again if you've played a bunch and you're looking for something a little bit different. Now we've got Monk and Unchained Monk. Again, they're exactly what you'd expect. The stereotypical kind of kung fu, shaved head, punch with your fist kind of monk is what they were originally inspired by. There's a whole lot of archetypes and ways to play them. You don't necessarily have to use your fist. You can use various weapons, a lot of them being Eastern weapons. and whatnot. The difference between monk and unchained monk is I believe unchained monk is better in almost every regard. Originally, flurry of blows based on a holdover of 3-5 is its own special kind of action. So instead of making a full attack like normal people do, once you get to mid to higher levels, where you make multiple attacks in a round, they use a flurry of blows, where again they get multiple attacks in a round, but as opposed to having full base attack bonus, full BAB. So let's quickly cover BAB for those who aren't aware. A base attack bonus, every time you take a class, you get a base attack bonus. So there are 3 different levels. There's half BAB, so for every level you take, you get 0.5 of a BAB. So every 2 levels, you get 1. Depending on it, you can either do partial BAB or full BAB, depending on your... Ask your GM, they'll explain it to you if need be. These are usually your spellcasters, wizards, sorcerers, and whatnot, who are not expected to make attack rolls all that often, and if they do, it's generally a touch range spell. As a result, they suffer a little bit in terms of BAB because they don't require it. Next, you have 3/4 BAB. These are the people that are going to be making attack rolls somewhat regularly. However, they have other class features that generally give them other utility, as opposed to focusing exclusively on martial disciplines. These are going to be your clerics, who are spellcasters but can hang in melee. These are your rogues, who have the roguish talent, attack, stealth, and whatnot to make up for it. Inquisitors, hunters. Actually, hunters might be full BAB. Inquisitors, and a lot of or a lot of more martially focused and defensive spellcasters get this. A lot of the hybrid classes, maguses, uh, inquisitors, and various classes get it, and some martial focused classes do. The 3/4 BAB, not the end of the world. You're just a little bit late in terms of that. And of course, full BAB is what you'd expect. You get your extra attacks early because every cutoff point, every 6 BAB you get, so every when you surpass the 5th BAB, so 6, 11, and 16, you get an extra attack every time you make a full attack. Going back to Monk, their flurry of blows starts off really weak. They're also not a full BAB class. So until they are really, really, really late in terms of their leveling process, like level 15 or 16, they are worse at attacking than or they have a lower attack bonus than a traditional martial. They make up for that in some of they're supposed to have made up for the fact that they have all their saves are good. So fort, reflex, and will saves, they're very good at all of them, as compared to the Unchained Monk, who doesn't have a good will save comparatively. And they get a bunch of other minute day-per features. They also have a key pull that they can use to either make an extra attack sometimes, they get defensive bonuses, they get mobility bonuses, and other features you can select down the line. Unchained Monk takes away their good will save, and instead of having this special chart for flurry of blows, it just says, whenever you make a flurry of blows, make an extra attack at your highest BAB. Assuming, of course, you're using a monk weapon. Nice, simple, easy, all taken care of. Not very complicated. And they also have a much more wide and varying selection in terms of what monk features they want to take. Normal monk have a very limited selection in terms of this 4th level you get this, 6th level you get this, 8th level you get this, so on and so forth. Instead, monks have a pool of you get a monk feature at each of these levels. It can be from any of this list, and as you get higher in level, more and more of these options open up. Flying Kick being an especial standout, which allows you to move a certain distance based on your monk level before you make a full attack. Pseudo Pounce, as it is called. Pounce being a feature that allows you to charge and make a full attack. It's very problematic in terms of martials, and everyone wants it. Unchained monks are able to do it. The only reason that I might play a normal monk over an unchained monk is specifically if my game master doesn't allow me to play some of the monk archetypes with Unchained Monk. Only certain ones have been ported natively over to Unchained Monk because of the open-ended options you have as an Unchained Monk and the very specific levels you get them. It doesn't translate one-to-one to a normal monk. So if I'm doing a very specific build with a monk and I'm doing a very specific archetype of the monk and my GM is unwilling to transition them over, or he's unexperienced and unable to transition them over, then I might play a normal monk. Some examples include Master of Many Forms, Master of Many Styles, or Thin Archers. Those don't have one-to-one translations, but those are some common options. But I would recommend going Unchained if you have an option. Now, ninjas. Oh, sorry. Let's go ahead and go back. Mediums, I believe, are charisma based. It might be wisdom based. I cannot recall at this point in time. Mesmerist definitely charisma based. Monks are strength or dex based, with usually a focus on wisdom, because they get additional bonuses based on their wisdom score, assuming they are unarmored. They also have the key pool that allows them to get the special features and so on. I've talked about that. Ninjas are a hybrid monk rogue class. They take the stealthy stuff of the rogue, they take the key feature of the monk, smush them together. Instead of sneak attack, they get something that's basically sneak attack, but labeled slightly differently. They also have a key pool based on their charisma score, so they do need a charisma score to take advantage of that. The most important being some sort of vanishing trick. As a swift action, they turn invisible. They have and it costs a key point to do that. Incredible feature, easy way to get sneak attack. A very, very. I haven't played one. I haven't played one extensively. I helped other people build them. I've seen them perform. They are very easy to get sneak attack with, and they can have as much or as little Eastern flavor as you want, but are generally quite good. Now, occultists. These are another of the occult classes. Of course, occultist occult class. A little less half-baked than the other ones, in my opinion. Or it could just be that I'm way more familiar with them. These are an int-based class, or not int-based class, sorry. I think it is int-based. Int-based class that, however, has the capability of being a martial-focused class. Their specialty are these things called implements. Implements and panoplies, I think. Regardless, there's these little items of power that an occultist has on their person that give them access to their class features. You choose them based on the classic wizarding schools, necromancy, transmutation, conjuration, and so on and so forth. And each day you have or as you level up, you get a selection of occult, basically power points to spend on your associated instruments and schools of magic. Based on those instruments and selected schools of magic, you pick from a selection of powers you can choose from. This sounds complicated. It's much less once you officially, it's overwhelming a little bit at the beginning. It's not all that complicated once you actually get into things. So, a bunch of different directions you can bring them. You can be an evoker, more focused on blasting magic. They have their own limited spell selection, up to I think maybe 6 level spells. And then their power selections kind of direct how they go. Evokers, they have blasting powers based on their pool. Transmuters give themselves bonuses, so they can get strength bonuses, con bonuses, and I think maybe dex bonuses permanently throughout the day, which can be quite powerful if you want to be like a more martially focused one. Necromancy, another fairly common one, because it allows them to summon undead minions that scale based on your own class level, as opposed to having to find corpses along the way. Your mileage may vary based on how welcome undead are, and of course how your GM rules with armor and equipment for them. But they are very cool in that they have... I mean, they're cool. I like them. The cultists can do a lot of various different things well. It can be played a whole lot of different ways. Again, int focused generally, but if you're going more martially focused, can be strength based, can be dex based. You do you. Next up, we have the Oracle. This is the spontaneous comparison in the same way that sorcerers are spontaneous compared to wizard, as we'll get to. Oracles are spontaneous on cleric. They use the same spell list, however, they are charisma based instead of being wisdom based. And the way that the cleric draws their power from a god, oracles have their power. They're not always exactly sure where they came from. It is considered a mystery, which is how we earlier when we were going through the AP, we were talking about mysteries. Something, maybe a god, maybe the forces of nature, maybe a great power, maybe a powerful fey creature. Something has given them this mystery. As a result, however, they have also been given a curse. I say quote unquote curse. Some sort of debilitating condition that as they'll continue to grow stronger, they will eventually be able to overcome. So, uh, spontaneous versus prepared casters. Quick summary of how those work at this point in time. Spontaneous casters are easy. As they level up, each spell level, or each of their class levels, there is a listed table of how many spells they know of each level. And once you make your selection at that class level, you lock it in. As you level up, you may eventually get options to trade out some of your lower level stuff. But each day, you get a certain amount of these spells at each level, and that's what you're stuck with. No changing anything out. The advantage of spontaneous is you oftentimes have a much larger amount of spells per day that you can cast. Much more limited in terms of what they are, but your quantity is greater. So simpler in terms of the day-to-day play of them. You're not going to have to switch things out as compared to a prepared caster. Prepared caster draws from a list of spells. If it is a cleric, any spell on the cleric list that is not opposed, that their deity doesn't oppose, they can choose from. Wizards have a spell book they choose from, and each day they go into that spell book and say, okay, I want to prepare this many of these spells per day. Your class will tell you how many of each spell per day you can cast, based on both the class level and your casting stat. And you make selections. So if you know you're fighting undead today, you might prepare some anti-undead spells. If you know you're going to be going against fire things, you can prepare some anti-fire magic. That sort of thing. However, playing oracles and sorcerers, you're stuck with, or playing spontaneous casters, you're stuck with what you got. Whatever spell selection you made, if it's not useful in the situation, it's not useful. Too bad. So the unique thing about oracles is they're not directly tied with a god, they're spontaneous, which can make it a little bit simpler. They have their mystery, which gives them bonus powers and bonus spells per day, and usually a class skill of some sort, based on what they are. There's all sorts of different options. You also come with a curse. These are, at the beginning, they're somewhat debilitating. You can choose them to be more or less debilitating depending on the curse you take. The advantage is, as time goes on, those debilitating conditions become less and less so. They're still always going to exist, but you overcome them in some way. For example, one of the options you have is clouded vision, one of the worst ones to get. Can't see beyond 30 feet, full stop. They're nearsighted to the point of really, really bad. But as you continue to level up within those 30 feet, eventually you get dark vision, eventually you get blind sense and blind sight, so you know everything that goes on within your 30 feet. Another one, that example, is lame in terms of one of their legs has problems. It lowers your movement speed, but eventually it makes it so you are immune to fatigue, immune to the exhausted condition. So while you are slow in terms of your movement, you'll never tire out as you continue to walk and walk and walk and walk and walk. So while they are debilitating, they also give you bonuses as you advance. Beyond that, there are full spellcasters. The one thing I will say, downside of sorcerers later and oracles now, they are a class level behind in terms of unlocking a new spell level. Wizards and cleric unlock spell levels at 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on. Whereas everybody gets their first spell level at first level in terms of full casters. But oracles and sorcerers get their spell level, or their second, or their further spell levels at 4, 6, 8. So they're a level behind. Arcanists are the same way, which can really kind of suck, especially if you're in a party with a full spellcaster. They got their new toys, they get to experience all that, and you don't get to do it yet. It also can sometimes cause problems with the assumption of when you get access to features. GMs and writers generally know when you get the odd levels at which you're expected to have things. So if you're a 5th level character, you're expected to be able to solve 5th level spell stuff, or 3rd spell level stuff, usually. So diseases, flight, and whatnot, and AoE protection magic. you're all expected to kind of have that at around that level. So being a little bit behind the curve can be a problem when you eventually go into prestige classes and multi classes. They can be problematic. So still play them if you enjoy them. Oracles especially are a very very fun spontaneous caster, but just be aware you're a little bit lagging in terms of that sort of growth. Now, Paladin, and then to a lesser extent, Anti-Paladin. These are your champions of goodness or evil. Limited spell casting they will eventually get, but most importantly, they're defined by their offensive defensive buffs against various things. Paladins are very good, and Anti-Paladins are very good, because at second level, they get their charisma bonus to their spellcasting, or to all saves. There's a straight bonus to all saves, and usually, since you have a fair bit of that, it is very hard to make a paladin fail saves. Paladins also get bonuses in terms of they get healing magic, a pool of healing magic they can use on themselves quickly, kind of in the middle of combat, or on allies they can use outside of combat or in a required situation. They can smite evil, which gives them big bonuses on damaging and hurting evil things. They get the charisma bonus to hit in their paladin level to damage, double paladin level damage against a specific list of really evil things for the first time each round in combat. So very powerful against specific opponents. Limited spell casting, they can eventually choose to either make their weapon better or get a mount of some sort. I mean, you know what you get on the tin in terms of paladin. They do have to worship a god, or sometimes your paladin or your GM may let you worship an ideal. They're limited in terms of Pathfinder 1 to being lawful good. You have to be lawful good if you want to be a paladin. Your GM may allow a little leeway. I'm personally of the opinion if you want to be a paladin, you can maybe be most any good. There's a special gray paladin that allows you to be lawful, or a special paladin archetype that allows you to be lawful neutral. However, you lose a lot of good paladin features. And the various archetypes allow you to kind of sometimes a defensive focus, sometimes an offensive focus, some more specifically fighting against various types of creatures. I mean, paladin, it's a paladin. What do you expect? Anti-paladins are the opposite of paladins, where paladins provide buffs and defensive auras to make themselves and their allies give bonuses against different saves. Paladins instead reduce that. They don't heal their opponents, they hurt them with a touch. They don't stave off conditions, they give conditions on a touch. So on and so forth. The one thing that I will note anti-paladins have that no one else has is instead of an aura of immunity to fear, they have an aura of removing immunity to fear. An aura of not inflicting fear, but making you susceptible to fear. So at third level, they get that aura, which can make them really powerful in terms of doing fear builds. Anti-paladins can also go both lawful or chaotic, depending on the archetype you choose. But otherwise, they're kind of a one-to-one inverse translation, exactly as you'd expect of a paladin. Okay. Paladins are a usually martial-focused class. Dex or strength based on how you build, and of course you need charisma, because everything they do uses charisma. Now then, Psychic. Psychic are a spontaneous caster, which means they're the even level casters. They're int based, but they have a secondary stat, either wisdom or charisma, based on the discipline they choose, how they choose to affect their mind. They're a full spellcaster, up to 9th level. However, as opposed to being verbal somatic, speaking and using their kind of arms and gestures, they just look at people, think real hard, and control their emotions to cast magic. Unique in how they approach that, they have different conditions under which they can't cast magic. If they're feared, they're unable to cast magic. But otherwise somewhat similar. They're very focused on mind-affecting effects. There's a strong focus. They have a very unique spell list, and they can do a whole lot of things. Can be a lot of fun. Again, just a kind of different flavor thing. You're going to be hampered in the fact that you're going to, especially in something like Mummy's Mask, which we're going to be getting to eventually, they are very limited in their they're damaging non-mind affecting spells. They can of course overcome certain types of mind affecting immunity with their class features, but that's limited times per day. They have an arcane reservoir they can draw upon. They unlock features they can use to do various gimmicks. But psychics are another just kind of they're a caster, they're a full caster, mind affecting focused with a unique spell system. Oh, okay, my voice. I might not have much time to build more than one character today because my voice is it's getting going. So next up, we have Ranger. Rangers are, I mean, pretty traditional what you'd expect. However, this time they come with a special class feature of racism. Yes, you heard me right. They, by native, have two features that kind of define them: favorite terrain and favorite enemy. Favorite terrain is when you're in the specific area, you get bonuses. As we discussed before, desert, urban, forest, mountain, urban, underground. Bonuses to various skill checks and initiative while in that terrain. And then favorite enemy is for a specific enemy type, either humanoids of a specific subsection like humans, undead, which is a broad category and that's a pretty useful one, outsiders of a specific alignment, uh, so on and so forth. They get bonuses to hit, damage, in skill checks again. Like I said, racism is a class feature, which can be useful in the fact that you get those bonuses. They also, of course, have nature and nature magic. They eventually get access to spellcasting, and they eventually get access to a ranger boon, as it were, which gives them either an animal companion that's a little bit worse than a traditional one, but you can take a feat to make them back to normal, or you can give your racism bonus to your teammates. But also, the main reason that a lot of people pick a ranger is they have a combat style. A combat style is they pick it when they first either their first level of ranger or their second level of ranger, regardless. They have to select a fighting style, and then as they level up, they get access to a list of feats they can select. Most importantly, they can select those feats without meeting their prerequisites, which is unique. You can get access to some very, very good feats, not like insanely overpowered feats, but you get access to some very, very awesome stuff earlier than you would normally get access to it. So that is one of the main reasons to play Rangers. Uh, Downside of Rangers is if you aren't actively fighting your favorite enemy or in your favorite terrain, you suffer. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're just kind of sad. The spell casting is kind of wimpy. They get some decent utility, but of course you only get up to fourth level spells and you're delayed. And they're kind of dragged in a lot of directions. You really got to focus on what you're going to kind of try and do. And a lot of the stuff they can do, fighters can also do. Maybe a little bit delayed. Don't get me wrong. But if you're looking for a more, I mean, it's a fighter with nature focus is what it comes down to. Exactly what it says on the tin. Next, we move on to Rogue and Unchained Rogue. I mean, they're exactly what you'd expect. Rogues are generally defined by being, maybe not necessarily sneaky. Usually they are sneaky, though. Dex-based characters. Actually, going back, sorry. Rangers usually strength or dex-based, depending on what they use, with enough wisdom to take advantage of their spell casting. Back to rogues, they're usually dex-based, though they can be strength-based just as much as anybody else. And then usually they like having a spattering of intelligence or charisma or wisdom, depending on what skills they want to specialize in. They get a huge amount of skill points to spend. But the difference between Unchained Rogue and Chained Rogue is Unchained Rogue are just straight up better. I don't think there's a single thing that Unchained or that Chained Rogue, the base Rogue, does better. Because all the archetypes switch over, and then Unchained Rogue just gets extra stuff on top of that. Specifically, Unchained Rogue gets weapon finesse training. At base level, they get dex to damage with a special selection of weapons. And then, most importantly, at third level, with a weapon of their choice, they get access to dex to damage. The advantage of that is you don't have to go jump through any hoops, you don't have to spend money, they just get dex to damage, which is very, very good. Also, at fourth level, they get bonuses, so when they do sneak attack damage, they get to apply a debilitating condition. Minor penalties to attack, AC, or movement, which are further increased penalties against you. Of course, rogues are defined by their sneak attack, when either the opponents are flat-footed, so at the beginning of the combat when you act for the enemy, or they are unable to see you or interact with you. They're paralyzed. They're hog-tied. They're uh, blinded. Some sort of condition that makes it so you can get sneak attack, or you are flanking with an ally. You're on opposite sides or opposite corners from your ally with an enemy in between you. You get sneak attack. At first level and every odd level, it's a d6 plus an extra d6. Beyond that, so you can get some pretty, with a lot of rogue levels, you can get some pretty high damage numbers, assuming you hit. Problem, of course, is sneak attack can be very hard to get. Most enemies are intelligent enough to not allow the rogue to get a full attack with sneak attack. So if you're trying to flank an enemy, they'll take a little step to the side that doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, so that you don't get to, or you have to move into position to. It can be troublesome, and that getting sneak attack as a rogue can be somewhat difficult. Otherwise, a lot of skill points means you can do all sorts of things with skills. I mean, generally they're stealthy, they're silent. They also have rogue talents. You can specialize if you want to give yourself, maybe you want to give yourself a little bit of poison use, maybe you want to give yourself a little bit of magic, maybe you want to be good at tumbling and fighting on the ground a little bit. That they have utility they can go into there. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Feel free to follow links down below if you want to see some of my content, and I will see you all next time.